Surprise. Another truck talk. Last Sunday night, I spoke about suffering. And I talked about people reaching out for help if they're suffering. And if you're struggling, to reach out for help and don't try to do these things alone. And I gave the example of Peter walking across the storm, trying to get to Jesus and failing. And he cried out to Jesus, and Jesus picked him up. So kind of suffering and reaching out for help was the main aspect of last Sunday night, but I want to talk about what's on the other side of suffering. People probably don't ever talk about that a whole lot, right? So if you're in a storm in your life right now, if you're in the midst of calamity right now, if you're brokenhearted, if you're struggling, if you're whatever, pay attention. Pay attention. This sermon's for you. So on the other side of hard times is something fabulous. Let's take poor Moses, for example, right? Poor Moses, bless his heart. Can you imagine everything that Moses saw and did at the end of his life? Like Moses saw God overthrow Egypt the harshest way possible, like through plagues and whatnot, right? He saw him harden Pharaoh's heart. He saw the way everything went down. He survived Passover, where everybody else died a horrible death unless you had the blood of the lamb over your door. And he saw the Egyptians just be absolutely thrilled to let the Israelites leave. And they gave him all these gold and all these wonderful things. And it sounds like, oh, yeah, we're awesome. We're winning. We're doing great. And then we get to the Red Sea and all crap, we're trapped. And then God opens the door that no man ever thought would be possible. God opened a doorway. If you would have told Moses himself that this is what God's going to do, he wouldn't have believed it. Fast forward to they cross the Red Sea, and God takes the Red Sea to destroy the people that are trying to kill Moses and the Israelites. He's like, okay, all these years of slavery is enough. That's it. We're over with, right? So God has Moses climb Mount Sinai, and he goes to talk to the Lord through a premonition of a burning bush. And while he's gone, everybody is down there pretty much partying it up and worshiping idols, and they've already forgot what God's done for them about an hour and a half. So Moses takes these 10 commandments of these tablets, and he gets super, super angry, rightfully so, and he throws them at them, and it destroys them, right? And then a whole bunch of those people died. So they became obedient all of a sudden after they saw everybody die, and they wandered around in the desert for a little while, and then another calamity happened, and then the ground opened up and swallowed a whole bunch of them, and a bunch of not nice stuff with serpents and a bunch of other stuff, right? Imagine everything that Moses saw. God got super angry at the Israelites one time. He's like, oh, God's like, okay, that's it. I'm just going to wipe them out. I'm done with them. And Moses is begging and pleading, please don't destroy your creation, you know. He wandered around in the desert for 40 years, making it rain food. Right? Moses saw some extremely harsh times. And at the end of that, I think that Moses had the ultimate faith in God because of all the things that Moses had to suffer and all the things that God delivered him out of, right? You think, oh, I'd say his nerves are frayed, right? No, that's not the case. He had ultimate faith in God. He knew that God was going to get them through things that you could not imagine, right? Nobody had Red Sea parting on their bingo card, right? Nobody saw that coming, did they? So fast forward to you, that's a similar effect, right? You're struggling, You're in the midst of suffering right now. You're brokenhearted. You're whatever it is, right? God might open a door for you that you could not ever imagine, right? And it's going to be in God's time frame. That's the tricky part. See, we're the microwave generation. We want to have a frozen lasagna. We go get one out of the freezer and pop it in, and ding, next thing you know, you got Italian food or Thai food or whatever. We're kind of spoiled society when it comes to these things. You want the answer to something, you just pull it up your phone and you get it. You want to get something delivered to your house, you just click, hit the button, and next thing you know, it's delivered to your house, right? So that's a new concept that didn't happen all throughout history. You used to have to go dig for something. You have to go fight for something, and we get kind of spoiled in some of these things. So we get on our knees and pray to God, hey, boy, I'd sure like this to be fixed. And then next thing you know, about an hour and a half, we want the answer. Well, not even that, like 5 minutes later. So I tell everybody all the time, imagine that God is a 4,000-year-old sequoia, and you're a mushroom that lives its life cycle in 24 hours, and you're telling God how he ought to live. How a sequoia ought to live, what a tree ought to be like. You know what I mean? Mushrooms that God has seen come and go in that little lifespan, right? So we get kind of spoiled when we're looking for results from God, right? So Moses earned his faith with God the hard way, the long way, the 100-year-old way, right? Where he saw God deliver them out of all kinds of things that a human could never imagine, right? And at the end of that, nothing shaked him. It doesn't matter what anyone came and told him. He's going to have faith in the Lord that it's going to be okay. We should take a lesson from that, right? But no one wants to get on the other side of hard times. No one wants to fight through the hard times to get that unshakable faith on the other side of it. I mean, we're the microwave generation. We want it easy, right? Just push your button and I've got faith. Well, it's like you can't just go into a new town and have everybody respect you. Some of these things have to be earned, guys. I'm going to talk about Job a little bit. Job was a ultra wealthy man in his time. Job had everything, right? And it said that he was a pretty much righteous person because he would set up offerings to God when he was even worried that his kids might have sinned. Oh my gosh, my kids might have sinned, so I want to do an offering to the Lord, right? And granted, this is the oldest book in the Bible, so this is long before offering was ever a thing, right? It's kind of strange, but just the numbers aren't going to be accurate. I'm just rattling stuff off the top of my head, but he had like 5,000 camels and 2,000 sheep and 2,000 whatever, right? And he had like 7 kids, right? Had the most beautiful daughters in the land, had the hardest working, most valuable sons that you could ever ask for, right? He had wonderful things, right? And Job gets in the middle of this struggle between good and evil. And he's telling God is telling Satan, basically, this is how this is going to work. My servant Job is going to stick with me no matter what, through thick and thin, right? So when we get in the middle of these things, we kind of sort of forget that there is another side to it, that these things this too shall pass, right? Isn't that what Solomon was famous for, right? If you're in the middle of good times, if you're in the middle of hard times, they're going to pass, right? So Job gets stuck in the middle of this good versus evil thing. And in the midst of his wealth that he has, servants come up to him and say, hey, he said, something terrible has happened. Your enemy is attacked and all of your camels are gone. And then another servant comes up and says, oh my gosh, your enemy is attacked. and all of your livestock is gone, right? And then another servant comes to the door and says, oh my gosh, a terrible fire broke out in your kid's house and all your kids are dead, right? So he went, if you had 5,000 camels, you had a ultra wealthy trucking company back then, right? Imagine having 5,000 semis and having all this livestock and all these things and the most beautiful daughters you could ever hope for and the strongest, most powerful sons to make you happy as you could ever hope for, gone in an instant, right? And then Job goes through this depression and this emotional roller coaster where he's all over the place. And then his friends show up and they don't help. Like this is the worst friends on planet Earth that could have showed up to help. They blamed him for all kinds of stuff, and there was this deep Hebrew poetic dialogue bouncing back and forth, and it's kind of a difficult book to read when it comes to these things. But anyway, even his wife curses him, saying, hey, why don't you just cuss God and die? You're guilty of something. Like, this is just get it over with, So not only has he lost everything in his life, he has 0 people supporting him. 0, not one person says, oh, wow, Job, what do you need? What can I help you with? So he is suffering as much as a human can suffer at that point, right? All of his children are dead, I can imagine. So if you stop reading the book there, if you close the book, you're going, man, God's a jerk. Keep reading. Job's story isn't over with yet, right? So if you keep reading, later on in Job's life, God doubles everything that he has. He has 10,000 camels at that point, right? He has his huge trucking company back times 2. It's bigger, right? And he's got like 4,000 sheep instead of 2. Like, God has doubled everything that he can. Everything that he had before that he took away from him, he doubled, right? And he has 7 more kids. And you're going to say, wait a minute, I thought he doubled everything, right? Shouldn't he have 14 kids? He does. He has 7 children waiting on him in heaven. And he has 7 children on earth with him. That's not a math problem that God put in there that didn't make any sense, guys. He doubled everything. He gave him 7 more children. So Job is going to have 14 children in heaven. And at the end of his life, Job had an unshakable faith in God. That the Lord's going to provide, and it doesn't matter if you open the front door and see a hurricane coming your way. One way or another, it's going to be okay because you're leaning on the Lord. Now, it may not look like you think it ought to look, and he may not answer the prayer you think he ought to answer, guys. But if you're in the middle of hard times, this too shall pass, and on the other side of this is something beautiful. After the storm clears, there's this beautiful smell of moisture, and the sun pops out, and a clean earth, and there's relief that you're out of that storm. There's this beautiful feeling, right? You only get that through hard times. If you're wonderfully healthy, if you're wonderfully loved and surrounded by lots of people, and you're covered in money and popularity and whatever, you're not on your knees praying to the Lord all the time either. You're not very close with him, right? It's just human nature. That's one of the fundamental things of the Old Testament, right? It's how fickle us humans can be. But on the other side of a storm, guys, is something absolutely beautiful that, like God parting the Red Seas, if somebody would have told you that God's going to do this for you, you probably wouldn't have believed it. You just have to experience it. You just have to go through it. And like I said last Sunday night's Truck Talk, Peter was sinking when the storm started to overtake him, and he couldn't save himself. He cried out to Jesus, and Jesus is the one that pulled him out of his mess. But he kind of had to drown a little bit for Peter to really appreciate these things. Peter was bold enough to step out for the Lord. Job was given twofold of everything, but he probably had a sense of security in the Lord. He probably had a sense of faith in the Lord that you couldn't buy with all the money in the world. You could not explain it to someone with all the money in the world. I have had a great life. I've never missed a meal. I'm surrounded by this little micro family that loves me and they respect me, and I've always had a good job and an opportunity to be a provider, and I've been able to rise up and overcome a whole bunch of circumstances in my life. But it's also been riddled in tragedy too. My life has been steeped in tragedy. And I have a dose of faith in God that you cannot buy. You cannot read it in a book and understand the faith that I have in the Lord, that everything is going to be okay, guys. Just half the details for my wreck was miraculous. Just the fact that God allows me to do the things that I can do now is miraculous, right? That's not me, that's Him doing that, working through me, right? Make sure He's getting the credit for that. I was at a funeral today, standing next to a casket of an absolutely wonderful human being. And if you know this or not, but there's not a lot of high-fiving going on at funerals, right? Like everybody's pretty sad. So there's a lot of crying going on today, and a lot of hugging, a lot of I love you, and everything's going to be okay kind of stuff. And I had to cut my visit short. And as I was leaving, in the midst of people that had been crying all day long, there was somebody sitting on a bench outside crying, right? For a completely different reason. And they're struggling on top of struggling, right? Once that person gets through this, guys, they'll have a faith in God that is rock solid. They'll have faith in the Lord that was fought for and earned. So you out there, if you are really struggling, if you're emotionally distraught, if you're in financial ruin, if your health is absolutely gone, have faith in the Lord. I talked to a guy today at the funeral, and he said, yeah, a doctor told me a long time ago I had 6 months to live, and here I am. He said, I've got a better physician than just my doctor. I have the great physician, right? So, oh my gosh, that's phenomenal, guys. And he wasn't wavering a bit. Gray-headed, and he'd been through all kinds of stuff, guys. You only get that on the other side of tragedy. So if you are in the midst of struggling or sadness or whatever, stay in the fight, guys. Don't let this storm sink you. Stay in the fight. Stay on your knees. Stay prayed up with the Lord. Reach out to your friends, something, because this storm in your life is going to pass, and it's going to be beautiful on the other side. And then the Lord is going to allow you, if you are willing, to go help others. Because you can say, hey, I've been there. I know what you're struggling through right now. I know what you're having to fight through, and I know it's not easy, right? If you hadn't been through that, they wouldn't listen to you. But someone who's been through a lot of tragedy in life, humans have a tendency to listen more to that, right? So what I'm saying is don't give up. Because I know the economy is not getting better. I know the world is not getting better. I know there's lots of things getting more evil in this world, guys. But He didn't call you to be a part of that. He called you to come out of these things. He called you to come out of Babylon and belong to the Lord, right? So we're not supposed to be a part of this world. We're not supposed to get filled up on junk food of this life, guys. We're supposed to stand out and be a light and be different, right? So this is my prayer for you guys. If you're sitting on a bench bawling your eyes out, you don't need to be doing it on your own, guys. You stay in prayer. You reach out to someone. You don't have to give everybody the down and dirty on what's going on inside your brain. You just call someone up and say, hey, I need some help. I'm struggling. Right? And if you're not going through a storm in your life, you must be living on the moon or something. Because it may not be all the time, but it's every one I know at one point or another, guys. If you're on your path to Jesus Christ, Satan would rather do nothing than take the wind out of your sails, and he's going to use absolutely every avenue possible. You're going to have to be like Moses and say, man, I've seen it. I've seen it, and I've been through these hard times, and I know what's on the other side of them, and thank you, Lord, for picking me up and packing me through them, right? I think that's it for tonight, guys. So I had a church service that if I would have canceled it just now, we did a weird evening service. And if I would have canceled it, which everybody would have completely understood, I would have missed out on an absolutely fabulous experience tonight at church. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. And I'm glad that the Lord got to do that for me, guys. It was phenomenal. So I'm going to hit the finish button on this. Don't be struggling, guys. Stay prayed up. Stay in the fight. Somebody loves you. Somebody's praying for you, and you don't even know about it. If you need somebody to pray for you, reach out to one of us because we'll gladly help you guys, okay? So, anyway, if you're not in a storm in your life, help others. Love your neighbors yourself, right? So, I love you guys. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Great weather coming. Spring's coming. Easter's coming. Good things are coming, right? So, I love you guys. You guys have a good evening. Reach out to. Love you all.